Let's go out. Western Pizza guest hotline. Get, like Luke said, go get a pizza with extra pineapple. Luke didn't say that. He hates pineapple
Say
on
Luke
pizza.
sent you.
Yeah, Western Pizza, great night for that. Farhan Lalji from TSN joining us. Okay, I've been teeing it up. Where are you, Farhan?
I am at home. Well, I'm walking my dog, actually. I was in the middle of a bunch of CFL trade calls and chatter, and then I will be in Arizona for the NFL playoff game on Monday. I was supposed to be at the Cotton Bowl tonight. Weather changed that a little bit, and off we go to Arizona Sunday for the Monday game.
Okay, so I thought you were supposed to be at the Cotton Bowl. Okay, so you threw me for a loop. Weather changed it?
Weather changed it, yeah, well, just because of the ice storms down there and what was going on with Arizona, just in terms of being able to, we had to kind of last-minute panic in the last couple of days here and make some changes. But either way, yeah, because we were originally scheduled to be in LA, and now we're going to be heading to Arizona for that game. And yeah, just a lot of scrambling the last couple of days. Usually travel is smoother than that.
Greg and I were talking. We hear your dog in the background. That's cute. How many people would just be scrambling right now to change plans that were planning to go to Los Angeles, yourself obviously included, but we're looking up tickets. Like, you can get into that game for a pretty good deal right now. I'm sure at game time, I think there is the charter out of Regina going down to Phoenix on Mondays or in around there. So it's not a bad thing. Crazy though. Let's start with the NFL before we get into the CFL. I asked Luke Mullender this when we were going and chatting earlier. If there is one maybe upset this weekend on this slate of games, Farhan, which one would you say would be the underdog prevailing?
I think this one. I think the Rams taking out Minnesota. I had a lot of success with them in a game earlier this season in October. And when you look at the Rams after Puka Nacua came into the lineup, and look, the last game against Seattle doesn't count because they sat so many people, but they were 7-2 with Nacua back in the lineup. And when you look at that offense with both he and Cooper Kupp operating on all cylinders, they've got a good running back now. Their offensive line is settled, and I think their defense has exceeded a lot of expectations. I think that was the team you didn't want to play. You know, coming into the year, everyone had San Francisco as a slam dunk to win the NFC West. Seattle started the season hot, but ultimately, you know, when you look at Coach of the Year candidates, I think Sean McVay should be up there with the job that he's done this season, and I think they very well could knock off Minnesota this week.
Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Can you see, you know, with injuries and stuff now? Can you see Pittsburgh? We lost them. On there, I'm here. Pittsburgh, Baltimore. The game that I don't know anything about. Maybe help me with this one. Washington, Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I want to see what Jaden Daniels does in a playoff situation, right? And look, I think what he's done this season, he's going to be a slam dunk winner of the most outstanding rookie this year. I think Brock Bowers has been exceptional, but I just don't know how you get away from what Jaden Daniels has done, how he's completely changed that franchise around. But you know, I like Baker right now. I just think he's playing with such a level of confidence in what he's managed to do the last couple of years, really, in terms of resurrecting his career. I like that roster. I like what they've got defensively. I think they're better. Like, could Washington pull off an upset? I think they could. And I think if it gets down to a late fourth quarter situation, I don't think anything's going to rattle Daniels in that stage or in that moment. But when you look at the other game that you had mentioned, you'd touched on Baltimore-Pittsburgh, I just don't see a path to victory for Pittsburgh with that offense. I think their defense has shown a few hiccups in the last few weeks. Lamar Jackson is playing out of his mind right now. I mean, I still have Josh Allen as my MVP, but when you look at the season that Jackson has put together, it's been really impressive. So I'd be shocked if Russell Wilson and Pittsburgh found a way offensively to generate enough points that they're going to need, because I think even if Pittsburgh plays well, Baltimore's putting up 28 points, and I just don't see Pittsburgh putting up 28 points. So I think Baltimore's going to win that game convincingly. But then on the other side, it's going to be fascinating between Tampa and Washington. But I still like Tampa in that one.
Luke's choice for upset, he liked Denver against Buffalo. Speaking of Josh Allen, I tend to agree with him.
Wow.
I actually agree with him. I think Denver's been playing some really good football, and Buffalo has been playing down to their opponent. Like, look at the issues they had with the Patriots. And as a Patriots fan, I hate to say this, they were bad this year, but they stayed tight with Buffalo.
Yeah, look, I know they did, but I think home field advantage in that one's going to play a big part. I want to see how Bo Nix handles that crowd and that atmosphere and all of it. I don't think the weather's going to bother him. I mean, it's just the same in Denver. But in terms of my dog's trying to pull me away here. In terms of what that home field is like at that stadium in Buffalo, and this is Allen's time. Has he got enough in him to knock off Kansas City when it gets to that point? I don't know, but I absolutely think that they're going to beat that they're going to win this game against Denver. Denver's going to be happy to be there, so they're going to play with no pressure. They're playing with the house's money, but I've got Buffalo all day in that game.
Let's go to CFL and the news that you kind of broke it on Twitter earlier this week that Jake Maier signs finally with the Riders. That's inked. We heard some audio from him today. A lot of people are I guess maybe a little confused on the 1-year deal. Do you think that was the best play for both parties, Farhan?
Yeah, I think it was. And look, at the end of the day, these things are 1-year deals unless there's guarantees at the end of it. And there was never going to be a guarantee on the back end of a 2 or a 3-year deal if you're Jake Maier. For Jake Maier, he's trying to resurrect his career. He wants to be here, play behind Trevor Harris, hopefully in his mind, right, that Harris is getting older and maybe in another year there's an opportunity, and that if Harris gets banged up again, that there's an opportunity here. But this is a show me, rebuild my career type of deal for Jake Maier. And if you're Maier, there's no downside to a 1-year deal here, because even if you sign a 2 and you have a great year, you're going to try to renegotiate it, right? There's no way around that. So I think it just makes sense here.
Also today, Hamilton re-ups Bo Levi Mitchell. Was there even any thought not to restructure that deal?
No, I think Bo wanted to be back. I think Scott Milanovich wanted him to be back. I think from Bo's standpoint, his deal was so incentive-based a year ago, right? There was so much tied to playtime incentives that he just wanted to get those numbers back to a point where there was a little bit more guaranteed, and he was able to accomplish that. He didn't even use an agent for this deal. He just kind of did it on his own. The bottom line in it, in terms of what he made this year versus what he could make next year if you just eliminate the playtime, it wasn't going to be a big cap hit for Hamilton, right? I mean, you have to budget that much anyway, because whatever other quarterback is there is going to have those same types of playtime incentives based into his deal. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at it, it's a reasonable number for a starter. Certainly a reasonable number for a guy that threw for 5,000 yards last year. And
sticking with quarterbacks, everyone seems to have their 2 quarterbacks, Harrison Maier, VA, and oh god, I'm trying to blank.
PJ Walker.
PJ Walker, yeah. Ford and Cody. Yeah. What's based on how Rourke played this last year? What's BC's plan?
Well, I think Chase Bryce, they've liked what they've seen from him the last couple of years, so it wouldn't shock me if they kick the market on, let's say, a guy like Jeremiah Masoli. But if they have to circle back and make Bryce number 2, I think they're comfortable. And what's interesting to me is just the stylistic fits in all those other quarterback rooms, right? You talk about Trevor Harris, not a guy that uses his legs a lot, right? He's a pocket passer, and you get that with Jake Maier. Cody Fajardo backing up Trey Ford in Edmonton, 2 guys that can run around a bit and sling it and do it that way. So, if Bryce is that guy, he's not necessarily that player in BC. It would have to look like an entirely different offense if he goes in versus what Nathan Rourke could do, which is why I think there's a bit of intrigue around Masoli, because despite his injuries, I think stylistically he still wants to move around a bit. So I think there's a fit there.
What the heck is going on with the schedule?
Well, I think part of this is the result of not having a commissioner in place, right? Because he's the guy that can go to other teams and can nudge them a little bit and say, "Hey guys, look, let's figure this out." If there's a little bit of a battle between 2 teams for a certain weekend, or getting off a Saturday date or something like that. So I think that's part of it. I think you want to get this thing done before Christmas. It should have been done before Christmas. I do think it'll be done by the end of the year, by the end of next week. I think that's going to happen. And of course, everybody's going to be in Carolina for the league meetings. But I will tell you this: first time you've heard it, you can put this one out there. There will not be a touchdown game. Atlantic, Pacific, anywhere, there's not going to be a touchdown game this year. And one of the reasons for that is that Toronto actually saw a bit of an uptick in their attendance. They're usually that team that gives up a game. They didn't last year when it was BC Ottawa, but you find that happening, when it was an Atlantic game, that it was always the Argos that gave up a home game. But they're seeing an uptick in attendance now, and they don't necessarily want to just hand that game over. So no touchdown game this year, but I do think you'll see it back within the next couple of years somewhere.
Wow. You heard it here
Breaking
first.
news.
Interesting stuff. Some people were talking, Farhan, about the stadiums that are sharing with soccer teams being maybe one of the hang-ups.
That is part of it. Yeah, I'm sure it is. And there aren't many of those, right? You know, we see it with Hamilton. We see it with Toronto. I don't think that's a huge thing. Toronto actually got better dates than I think they were anticipating on the front end. But, you know, there's teams that don't want to play Saturday or they don't want to play Thursdays. You know, there used to be a time where everybody said, look, the big markets, don't have them play early week games in the fall. You know, they always want to play Saturdays in the fall. And, you know, on summers, they want to be able to have getaway games because there's so much more to do. And now every market seems to say that, you know, even in Saskatchewan, hey, we got people that want to get away, out of the city, and so don't give us Saturday games, give us Friday games and, you know, things like that. There's more teams with kind of excuses as to what their schedule looked like, whereas previously, you can kind of slot in things a little bit more clear. So I think that's hanging things up a little bit. But again, I think they're close. I know they've been through about 6 drafts of it now, and they're almost there.
Are the CTV 2:30 games going to be a thing again this year? I know that changed the schedule mid-season last year.
Couldn't tell you. But I do think the CTV games are going to be there. And I think that, you know, when you saw what you did with the Grey Cup, I think it just takes time for fans to get used to watching games there on that channel. So those games will be back, but I don't know that they'll all necessarily be 2:30 games yet.
And then are you waiting for anything else to fall as far as CFL player-wise, anything? Like what's the next thing that you're waiting for?
Curious to see what what Toronto does as far as their defensive coordinator spot goes. In terms of players, you know, the trade that has just dropped right now between Calgary and Toronto. Toronto with Flo Aromalade going back to Calgary, Cam Judge going back to Toronto, I think is an interesting one. You can see what's happening there. You know, Calgary desperately needed pass rushing help. They were able to get it. You look at Toronto, it looks like they're going to have a ratio change at linebacker. You could kind of see that coming when they added Ryder Varga, that they were going to get the next piece there. So with Cam Judge. But, you know, you're looking at a few teams that are going to rebuild some of their rosters, but I'm not sure that there's necessarily a player I'm waiting for a move. I think the Bow one was the big one. We knew that was coming. We just wanted to see the I's dotted and the T's crossed for that one.
Okay, and then last thing quickly, any chance do I sprinkle on Texas tonight?
No chance. No chance.
Really? No chance.
Well, look, there's always a chance, right? I mean, Ohio State lost to Michigan, and Michigan is not a good football team. Ohio State should have been a 2-touchdown favorite in that game, and they coached their way out of it, right? Their practice or their game plan for that game was a tragedy. You know, we're going to go big on big. Everybody thinks Michigan's physical. We're going to try to out-physical them, as opposed to actually playing with what their strengths are. So could they be dumb again? I guess they could, but when you look at what they've done the last 2 games, as long as Ohio State stays out of their own way, there's just no chance. Texas can't run the ball on anybody. They're going to need to shorten the game if they want to win tonight, and I just don't think stylistically they do that well.
There it is. All right, we'll let you get back to walking your dog. It's antsy out there, and we'll see what happens. Thanks, Farhan.
It is antsy over here. All right, take care.
From TSN, Farhan Lalji joining us. Okay, well, I was excited to maybe sprinkle a little bit on Texas. Again, I don't know enough about those 2 teams, and he's saying stay away.
I agree with him on that one. I've stopped giving you advice after last time I was here.
What was the last advice?
I thought Boise was going to cover, and they almost did. Well, it wasn't for the kicker.
The Arizona game the last time we were here. Gee, I was like, they should have won. There was a bad call at the end, and I was like, that would have paid off handsomely. I guess it isn't. So you got to go. I know you're almost out of halls.
I am.
Thanks for stopping by again.
No problem.
Lots of fun. Go listen to that 300 episode of the Piffles podcast where they talk to Coach Mace. When we come back, I'm going to talk to Josh Miller. It's a senior hockey report coming up here on the Sports Cage, streaming at sportscage.com.